Thank you. Thank you so much for hanging around. Some of you came early. We appreciate so much. You may have came today because you've kind of heard that we're celebrating 40 years of God's faithfulness here at the church, but that's not really true. We're just trying to get our Sunday school numbers up. And we thought, if we ordered extra donuts and came up with something, there's the Jamie's bunch. I see them there. I hadn't seen them, some kids. And it's thank you so much for being a part of this. And there's several guests. If you're coming in for the second service, we're so blessed to have Jeanette Flynn with us preaching for today. That's such a blessing. She's put the challenge on us the first service, and thank you for that. We're going to sing a couple of songs to get started. Music was always a big part of all that went on, and many years ago, long before we got a real worship pastor here, I played the piano a lot of services and kind of like this. And so we're going to sing a couple of songs, if that's all right with you. Is that all right with you? Yeah, okay, good. I mean, what are you going to say? Are you going to say no? Probably not. So, Janice, come on. Janice Brasher, this is Paul's mom, and everything good about Paul, you can thank her.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah. Oh, boy, there's some stories there. But anyway, we sang in the first service, and I do declare it's the smallest print I've ever seen in my life. So I think 40 years ago I could have read that better. But this was a song Cliff and Janice and I sang or played together probably all the way back in 1977 when I first met them at a Missouri State ministers meeting. And we sang a lot of songs, Janice. All right, so we're gonna sing about something really wonderful, and that's God's people. I love the thrill that I feel when I get together with God's wonderful people. Love the thrill that I feel when I get together with God's wonderful people. What a sight just to see all those happy faces praising God in heavenly places. What a thrill that I feel when I get together with God's wonderful people.
That the Spirit of the Lord will be there too. There's no fellowship so sweet, there's no thrill that can compete with the thrill that I feel whenever God's children meet.
I love the thrill that I feel when I get together with God's wonderful people. Love the thrill that I feel when I get together with God's wonderful people. What a sight just to see all those happy faces praising God in heavenly places. What a thrill that I feel when I get together with God's wonderful people. It can be just anywhere, 2 or 3 are gathered there, that the Spirit of the Lord will be there too. There's no fellowship so sweet, there's no thrill that can compete when the feeling I feel whenever God's children meet. I love the thrill that I feel when I get together with God's wonderful people. Love the thrill that I feel when I get together with God's wonderful people. What a sight just to see all those happy faces praising God in heavenly places. What a thrill that I feel when I get together with God's we'll sing another quartet song. We actually did this in the first service. Marisa said, are we doing the same song again? And I told her my plan was by the second service, that will be 3 times. I think I'll have all the words right by then. So in practice, this was an old, early days quartet. Of course, Cliff's in heaven singing right now. He's not with us. Marisa's going to cover his part real good. But it's just an old quartet song called Sail Away Home.
I may be on a train, I may be on a plane when I hear God's final call. I may be on the ground
When I hear the trumpet sound,
it really doesn't matter at all. I may be on a trip, I may be on a ship, but no matter where I roll, on land or on the sea,
protected I will be.
I know I'll sail away home.
Well, I'll
sail away home, sail away home. I'll leave this world behind.
I'll
Sail away home, sail away home. To heaven I will climb. Oh, I can hardly wait to step inside the gate, see Jesus on his throne.
Someday by and by, in the twinkling of an eye,
I know I'll sail away home. It may be night or noon, it may be very soon. He'll come like a thief in the night. He'll come with all his power.
It could be just any hour.
When I take my final flight, I'll sail away with ease, faster than any breeze or astronaut, you know. The time is very near,
Soon Jesus will appear,
and then I'll sail away home. Well, I'll sail away home, sail away home. I'll leave this world behind.
I'll
Sail away home. To heaven I will climb. Oh, I can hardly wait to step inside the gate, see Jesus on his throne.
Someday by and by, in the twinkling of an eye,
I know I'll sail away home.
Oh, man. We'll do one more. This was in 1984 was the first year in Branson, the Wrestler show, and we're putting the show together. And my mom never was one to really say, I think you should do this. Now, she might have an opinion on whether my suit was on right or not or whatever, but she wouldn't say this song or that. But this was a song she heard and she liked. And, you know, you'd think, well, this is probably not a show song, or even though it was gospel, but it kind of stuck, and we did it for how many years, Paul? We did it for too many years, he said. But you would think after all those years I wouldn't need these words right now, but we're going to do it just seems so appropriate with the wonderful message Jeanette just delivered to us as a church, that God not only sees the beginning, but he sees the end. And the song is just all about the very fact that God was the one that grew the tree that would be used to crucify his son. And I don't know about you, but that's a gripping thought. So we're going to do a verse of it. He molded and made a small, lonely hill that he knew would be called Calvary. Then he made a seed that would grow to be thorns that would make his son bleed. gave it leaves and then gave it sunshine and rain and sheltered it with love. He grew the tree that he knew would be used to make the old rugged cross. Nothing took his life with love he gave it. He was crucified on a tree that he created with great love for man. God gave us this plan. He grew the tree so that we might grow free. He grew the tree that he knew would be used to make the old rugged cross.
All right. We've got a lot of stories to tell. I think you're in the middle, Johnny. Yeah, that's the hot seat. Trying to figure out exactly what are we doing and how are we going to tell the story. We thought we would ask him questions because if you don't, who knows where. You and I kind of like the rabbit trail. And so we might start off on church stories and we might end up on a turkey hunt somewhere. So, we're going to ask the questions. That's why she's here, so that we don't
keep
end up.
order.
That's right. And so, anyway, just to tell the Crossroads story, can you take us back to the first Sunday that you were here? And I don't know, you may even want to tell them how you came about coming here.
We'd started a show, like I said, in Branson in '84, and was worshiping in the church there in Branson. Had two little bitty small girls, and in that early spring of '86, a guy named Clarence Martin, some of you might have known Brother Martin, they called him. He was a builder around here for years. He was well up in years, probably in his 80s then. He called me and said, we really need somebody to preach for us. The church we're kind of down to our last leg. The church had been a little bigger at one time, but just through matriculation, it got down to a very, very small group. And he got my name from a lady that was in the community at the time that had been in the little church that my brother and sister are here today. Thank them for coming. But we grew up in a small church in Leesville, Louisiana, and this lady had been in that church, and she had up in years, she'd been a widow for years. She married a guy, and they were living here. And so Brother Martin got my name from the music show, and he called and asked if I would come down to preach. And it was just it was one of those moments I was glad to serve. And so I came down by myself that first Sunday, and nothing quite prepared me for what I saw there, because there were 7 people, and there were 5 little ladies and 2 men. And there were a few other people that probably may have claimed affiliation with the church, but no more than a couple of dozen. But on that Sunday, there were 7. And it was Clarence Martin, and then there was a gentleman named Clarence Harp. Some of you have known some of his family. And then there were 5, the most precious little older ladies. And there was Mabel Kendall, which years later her son Jiggs got saved. And and all three of her daughters have came through the church at one time, a grown woman, but Mabel Kendall and Leona Trout. And if you ever wonder where Dan Trout got all that stuff that he does, this lady was a card, and she was super, super special. They all were. There were two sisters, May Battenfield and Faye Lane. And Faye had raised a large family of kids as a single mom, and many of them came to the church through the years. And that was Mitchell Young's mother-in-law, and MT's grandma. I see MT back there. And anyway, there was also a lady named Seva Goats. Is that 5? I think that's all 5. And so that was the 7 total that were there that first Sunday. And I played the piano, and we sang some hymns and preached, and I spoke to everyone and got ready to drive back to Branson. And Brother Martin, as only he could do, he said, so what are you doing next Sunday? And I said, well, I don't really have my plans. I mean, I don't know exactly what I'm doing. He goes, well, we'll see you next Sunday, too. And he was a very short man, but he was very hard to say no to. I'll just put it that way. So that was the first Sunday.
Well, how about those early years? I know we're celebrating 40 years of you being here at Crossroads, but you've got 10 years ahead of that. That was since your ministry license, but we're focusing mainly on the 40 years here at Crossroads. Do you have any God moments that kind of you want to share about in those early years?
We were talking about this the other night out at the house with Janice. Going to Branson was a career move, obviously, to start the music show. My partner, Cliff, Paul's dad, had been a pastor for a lot of years. And for him, it was kind of a shift from almost 30 years, probably, of pastoral ministry. Going into the music show was very much a ministry for all of us. But I see Cliff, I always still felt like that I was called to the ministry and whatever that looked like in capacity. So those years were kind of, that year and a half or so before I started coming down here was kind of a transition time. And yet I just wanted to be faithful to serving. So it was kind of a natural thing to step into it. So to serve the church, but I never really saw a plan to stay here. Obviously, as I said, had 2 small children, and the music show, we weren't knocking it dead then, were we, Janice? No. Okay, that's what I thought. But anyway, that's how I remembered it anyway. I just didn't see a plan to do this. And so I fell in love with those little people. They were precious. They were very kind to me. They were about as humble as you could imagine, as far as just humorous things that happened. The first summer that I was there, Brother Martin would want me to come down on Wednesday night and lead. He called it prayer meeting. We'd have prayer meeting on Wednesday night. And I remember coming down one Wednesday night, and man, the building was just so hot. It was, like the air conditioner hadn't been turned on all in that old building. And Brother Martin said, let's all gather up here. And I looked around, and on one side of the church, he had hung a ceiling fan, one ceiling fan. He said, if we'll just sit right under here, we'll get a breeze. And so I led a Bible study and sweated, and they sat under the fan. And he said, oh, we won't have to turn the air conditioner on. And so to say it was humble beginnings, maybe that's an understatement, but a lot of amazing, funny things happened during those early years, and Brother Martin, obviously, with all the others, were very central to that. Did I cover all of them?
We don't have time to cover them all, so you did good.
Thank you.
You did really good. Just a side note, this isn't even in our notes, so I'm going to rabbit trail just a little bit. Johnny came to work for my dad, who pastored, as he said, for 30 years. Before we came to, when we say the show, people ask me all the time, Johnny said something about the show. What does that even mean? we sang in a music show in Branson together. And but prior to that, he worked with my dad. And so a lot of people that are here, some of you already know this, but when Johnny came into my life, I was about 14 or 15 years old. He was my youth pastor. And then I worked with him and for him in Branson. And then God allowed us to be here together. So we've been hanging out for 40 years. And so anyway, it's just kind of a sweet part of our story. You alluded to a little bit of this, but lighthearted, humorous stories about the old church and the first days. And, you know, you already did the fan, you know. I thought you should have just said, let's just go outside. All 7 of us. We can sit on the grass, you know. But anyway, any other things that just would be, you know, part of the story, humorous stories?
Well, there's just probably so many. You. Yeah, Paul's not helpful as usual, but now we probably won't tell that story. But who knows? Maybe we will. I don't know. But anyway, it was just very humble in the early beginnings, coming down, and not long after, about a year down here, so my mom and dad moved to Branson. They started coming down with us and kind of helped the church a little bit. And when I say the church was humble, it was very humble in terms of its resources and finances and stuff. And Brother Martin was kind of masterful in motivating you to do things, but also very committed, because he talked me into coming down and visiting some people. Said we need to get some people back in church. And so I came down and met him one weekday, and he said, well, we need to go in there and pray around the altar at the church. And it was hot. Anyway, the church that was. And so we went in and prayed, and he had a list of people to go visit that used to go to the church but didn't go anymore. And after about the second visit, I was way uncomfortable, because he would have never made it as a traveling salesman, because I think he offended everybody by saying, so why aren't you going to church now? And then I realized also that was part of his sale pitch. Why aren't you going to church? We've got this young preacher as our pastor. And I was like, did I say I was the pastor? I thought I was preaching, filling in down here. He said, we've got this young preacher, and he's in a music show. And I was like, oh, great. You know, and you could just see people's faces going, whoopie-doo, we're probably not going to go there. And, you know, by all standards, you could kind of look at it. There wasn't a children's program. There was probably barely a nursery there. You know, there just wasn't much to offer people in terms of things, but there was a genuine love in his heart. And as I recall, that 7 that I named, there were about 5 of them. That was the board of the church. And it was some of the most comical things about how, I'll tell a quick story about those precious people. They had a little debt on the building, and they were trying to make that payment and keep the lights on. And I sat in with them in a board meeting. And again, I'm the guy filling in. I'm not the pastor here, right? And Brother Martin says, well, I tell you what, guys, I'm going to put in $250 this month. What are you going to do, Clarence Harp? And Brother Harp sat beside me and goes, well, I'll put in $200 this month. And he goes, well, we're still a little short. And I'll never forget, bless her heart, Mabel Kendall said, well, I can give 25. And the rest of them are sitting there, and finally Sister Trout said, all right, I wasn't going to give you anything till Mabel said something, but I'll put in the rest of what we need. And it was hilarious. And again, ode to Dan there, because she had a dry sense of humor that was just special. So I could probably go on, but that hopefully captures the nature of just how humble they were. Jamie might remember the old buildings where Ozark Opportunities is at now. The church eventually bought a bunch of houses around there. And I don't know if the kids, how old they were. One of you learned the name Catacombs, and they call the downstairs of the church the Catacombs, because there were no windows or anything, and it was kind of a spooky looking place.
One quick story, and then I'll And this, I won't tell the one you don't want me to tell.
Thank you.
I went to the hospice house to see Rose Henson. I don't know if any of you knew Rose Henson. She finally was losing her fight with cancer, and she was at the hospice house. So when I walked in, they were attending to her, and they said, "Are you here to see Rose?" Yes. I said, I can leave or come back. We won't be just a minute. We're almost done. So they went back in, and they said, "Rose, your pastor's here." And she goes, "Oh, did you get a good look at him? Is he not a beautiful man?" And I thought, well, yeah, and at that point, maybe I had lost a little weight, I didn't. And she just went on, he's a good preacher, but is he not something to look at? And so she just went on and on. Finally, the lady came out. She was almost embarrassed to look at me. And so she finished, and she said, "You can go in." And I walked around, and I barely got into her vision. And she goes, "Oh, I thought Brother Johnny was here."
Yeah, I can't confirm that story. I don't know about that.
He is a pretty man. So I've heard the stories about when the Prospect story kind of came to a close abruptly, and you guys moved here. Can you tell us a little bit about the purchase of the new property and how that went?
There was a number of, obviously, there's God moments all the way through this, guys. We're laughing about things, but boy, let's be really clear. This is one of those deals where the Lord, this is the way He does things. He chooses the most unlikely situations, in many ways the most unlikely stories, and He goes, "Those are the ones I'll use." And that truly was the humble nature of this. I've shared this, I think, in recent years, but I'll never forget the Sunday morning that we proposed to the church to buy property. And the church had bought all the houses around that old building, so we were kind of in the rental business. That's how the church was making up the difference in their giving and stuff. We had the old parsonage and 2 other houses, and it was all about, we're doing pretty good now. We got things paid for. And yet, God just kept stirring in my heart. And there were a couple of guys praying with me about it, but they didn't see a way. And this property came available out here. It was almost 20 acres, 19-something acres at one time. And it was offered at just an incredibly reasonable price. And so we decided at that point, the church was probably running 80 or 90 people. Easter Sunday, we'd have maybe over 100 people. The building didn't seat barely over 100, I would say. And so it was, something had to change. And there was a lot of talk about maybe the church would just do a restart, just in the community, restart. We actually took some time for people to choose what's going to be the new name of the church. And we prayed about that and different things. And our affiliation, with the movement we were part of, that didn't change, but we kind of viewed it as a new start. So we would come out here with a new name, Crossroads Community Church. And so that Sunday morning, I presented to the church the purchase of this property. And it was, like I said, a very, very good piece of property. There was a golf driving range here. Some of you may have worked on your slice here at one time. But Brad did. We had it offered to us for $100,000. And it was for property in town. It was amazing. And I remember presenting it to the church that Sunday morning. And I said, we can get that property for $100,000, and we'll put all the church here and the 3 houses, the little houses, they had rental properties. We'll put that up for sale, and we could build out there. And we started to talk. And there was a couple of conversations, and one of the little ladies I told you about, her name was Seva Goetz. She lived just down the street. May and Faye and Seva, they all walked to church. They live right there within a block. And Sister Goetz never said anything in church. And she raised her hands like that. And I thought, oh, okay. And I called on her. And no matter how long I live, I'll never forget this moment. Because Sister Goetz said, Brother Walters, did you say $100,000? $100,000. And in that moment, I thought, that feels like she just said 10 million. And maybe it might have been to her. And I said, Sister Goetz, yes, $100,000. She went, oh, Lord, like that. And they voted 100% to buy the property out here. And it was a step of faith. And we put the old church building that would never sell. It was going to be a disaster. Nothing in it was code, I don't think, anywhere in the building. There were no downstairs. I mean, it was nothing about it. And we took that step to go to the bank and borrow money. A few of us signed for the note to buy the property. And then we put all of that property up for sale. And in 1 week, I got a call. Joe Eddings, where you at, Joe? You here today? I don't know if he's here today. Joe Eddings was on the board, and Joe called me up at the show in Branson. We were getting ready to do a matinee, and he said they sent a message backstage. A guy from the church was on the phone, and I picked it up, and he said, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, well, "Who died? You know, what happened?" And he goes, "We just had somebody offer full price on all the property, everything." And that was less than a week from when we had agreed to sell it. And it all sold. Oh, trouble, we didn't have a place to go, but that's another whole story.
Don't tell that.
Which is the next question.
Yeah.
Which is the next question, because we had bought the property and had it for a few months, and we were renting it to the man that had the golf driving range here. He was going to rent it from us, and that was going to help us pay for it. He had set a double-wide trailer down here, and it was using that kind of as a pro shop. And he was probably a delightful gentleman, but I understand he kind of ran on hard times and needed to leave town fairly fast. But he left a building that was rented for 2 years, a double-wide, like a modular building that you'd use at a school for classrooms. He had that, and it was filled with golf products. The awful supply of Ping and Callaway and everything imaginable. It was all on consignment. And the property was, the mobile home was up for rent. And there was about 20,000 golf balls laying everywhere on the property, and he was gone. And so the place sells. Within 2 weeks, we move into a double-wide trailer that had room for 100 folding chairs, as tight as you could put them in, and there was a bathroom in the corner. So when you got up, there was no doubt what was going on. Yeah, in the corner. So you not only had to just get up and go to the bathroom, you had to come to the front. And I had a keyboard to lead worship and singing, and I could touch the person in the front row right there. And so we moved out and started service there.
So can you tell us a little bit about the financial challenges of building the actual first building on this property? You probably could get some help from some of those board members sitting out there, that Jimmy Ferrari especially, probably.
Jimmy, are you here today? Yeah, these old board members, they heard we were doing this, they hid. They're doing the. Yeah, there was we started. Brother Martin was no longer in the picture; he'd gone to heaven, and so we were kind of on our own. And the bank that we had borrowed the money from for the property, we went to them to borrow money to build where the if you've kind of seen the campus, the way it lays out from up above or something, the original building was like 60 by 200, and it was the gym and everything on that end, and we were going to be able to build this building for, like, as I recall, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $650,000, this metal building. Well, we didn't realize, even though we were outside the city limits of Harrison, the city of Harrison, they gave us a gift that kept on giving, because they said, "No, but you're going to have to put a sprinkler system in." And in that building, our cost price went up by like $100,000 on that building. And the bank that we were borrowing from, they said, "Well, we're going to kind of pass on the project." And so they're again, another God moment, because God put a banker in our path, and he he visited with me one day out here. The building was about half built, and he assured me that on paper, this loan made absolutely no sense at all. And there's no way you can do this. And I said, I understand that. We feel pretty strongly. He says it'll take everything that the church is taking in just to service the debt and to keep the electricity on. And I was getting prepared for him to go, there's no way we're going to pass on this loan. And he told me all the reasons why this was the worst bank loan in the world. And I said, yeah, I said, we just feel like this is what God would have us do. And the man didn't attend the church, but he kind of walked around, looked at a half-built metal building, and he said, all right, I'll lend you the money. I was like, you are? You're a bad banker. But anyway, he did, and that's another whole story with some fill in the blank on some names, but there were several things along the way that were big. And we started that building and for the next 12 years. All you guys, I'm seeing Joe, Paul, and Ronnie, and many of you that are on the board. And there's Brent King back there. He was on it, and I keep going. Yeah, Mitchell's back there. We literally built here for 12 years through the completion of the children's wing over there.
Okay. Could you maybe just answer a few questions all at once? So the 12 years of building, but can you tell us a little bit about just God's faithfulness through the years and spiritual growth and number of baptisms and all of that kind of thing?
Well, that really is the key question of it all right there. It is all about the faithfulness of God. There are church buildings all over America that are empty today, and we've seen it in our own community. Having a beautiful building and having a large structure or whatever, that doesn't make a church. It's not church till you guys get in here. Then it becomes a church. And there were a number of powerful spiritual experiences through the years. I can't help but look over at Janice there, because parallel to doing this, we were trying to run the business in Branson and keep the show going up there. And that had kind of reached a point by the time we were in the midst of all the buildings and things that we just kept seeing. We look back at old records, and, we probably baptized about 75 people in Crooked Creek when we were in between having baptistries. Tyler, you were baptized at Crooked Creek. A lot of the rest of you were. Josh Keener was baptized at Crooked Creek. And Teresa Jones was kind of the star of the video back there. She got baptized, and the Lord did a change. In the midst of the challenging times, all of these things, there were some times, guys, that it kind of felt like this is probably too much. Somewhere in that transition, I literally prayed for a decade. God, would you release me from Harrison? Would you get them a good preacher? They are good people. Get them a pastor. Would you just get them a pastor? And at some point in there, it went from praying, Lord, would you get him a pastor, to, do you think it'd be okay if I stayed, Lord? And he already had the plan, already figured out. He'd seen the end. But during that window, we had a lot of Sundays. We baptized 15, 20. I remember one Sunday we baptized 33 people. And our records are not really super complete going back 40 years, but the best we can come up in the offices we started going through, and I was so glad to be able to get Paul and Lisa in on this to say, do you remember when you baptized so-and-so? And Paul goes, who's that person again? And that here at Crossroads, there have been just a little over 500 people baptized in the 40 years. So It's it truly is a God-sized task, and oftentimes when you do some things, and whether it's open a new business in Branson, there are times that looking from the outside in, it's like, boy, that really was easy, wasn't it? That came really easy. It wasn't easy. There were some hard days, and we ended up during as the show grew in Branson. I had a number of years. We did about 300 music shows a year, and I preached down here every week and tried to keep up with visitations and funerals. And we were doing math the other day on certain seasons, and several years ago, within the window, my mom passed away. In 30 months, we did 72 or 74 funerals at Crossroads. Within 30 months, that's a whole church of people right there, all precious people that are in heaven. So, by the way, we're represented in heaven from Crossroads today. Thank God for that. But a lot of amazing God stories and moments, and all the way through hard times, just His faithfulness, and the song in worship this morning, the goodness of God. How can you walk your life and not realize just truly how good God is? And I would even maybe take a moment to say, you see Tara McKinney and Drew and Jonathan up here. Tara's grandfather, Linville Arrington, some of you will remember, and there's Pam Slay back there. She'll remember back in those days. I saw a picture, Joe, of you being baptized. You were a child. You look like you were a child, and my mustache was completely black back then. But old Brother Arrington pastored here 2 different times, and it's a miracle that they didn't starve to death, literally, the old preachers and things they did. And when we dedicated this building, 2012, Brother Arrington had preached at that old building over on Prospect Street for years and years. And he said that God had given him a vision that someday there would be 1,000 people in the Church of God in Harrison. And Brother Arrington came in and spoke, just delivered a short word on the day we dedicated this sanctuary. And he shared that story that he felt like God had shown him a vision when there was 60 people in a little church, and that's all they had, that there would be 1,000 people someday in the church. And on that Sunday, we had over 1,000 people here in dedication. And so those are God-sized moments and things.
Well, we're just about out of time. Anything to close?
I don't know. I guess I would just say, I mentioned this to the ladies and the men that were on the board of elders this year at our church. So many of you that are sitting out here, you sat on boards and committees here. And one of the things that has been the most remarkable, maybe, how can you say most remarkable? It was so remarkable that many of you don't even know who are on the board of elders at this church. You don't. That's not because they're secret Christians. It's because they don't have a desire to be up front. They have a desire to serve. And listen, there's been decades of individuals just like that. I go back through and think of the ones who was chairman, who was vice chairman, who was on this board, how long, for years of service. And it takes that kind of support for any church to grow. And truly it wasn't unique to us, but when I heard someone say, Jesus is the subject, which was something that the Anderson movement had promoted for a number of years, I think that was truly our goal here, is that we wanted to make Jesus the subject, and we wanted to make the Word of God the Word of truth. And week in and week out, we've tried to do that. When it's not been popular, I've had people that didn't like what I preached, but it has always been my desire to preach God's word first. I've heard people tell me that I was really, really good, and they haven't heard very many preachers. They'll hear a real good preacher here in a minute. But the goodness of God has been realized, I believe, through faithfulness. And that's certainly not just the faithfulness of the pastor. It's the faithfulness of all these things. I could go through, again, years of service. This guy's been here 18 years. Lisa served 17, 18 years, almost 19 years probably you've been here now. And those are long, long tenures of service. And again, I would just encourage you with this word that it is in those deepest points of our life. It is in the hardest times that God shows up the biggest. Doesn't make the times any easier. It doesn't dismiss hard times. But we serve a faithful, faithful God. And I could go on and on. So many of you I've asked to serve. There's one lady in the church, I'm looking at her, but I'm not going to call her name right now because I didn't get permission. The church was growing like crazy, and I went to this faithful teacher at our church, and I said, I believe the Lord just has directed me to ask you, could you help with children's ministry? And I'll never forget the look on her face when she looked at me and said, Brother Johnny, I'll do whatever the Lord wants. I don't even like my own kids some days. But if you, she knows who I'm talking about. She said, I'll do whatever you need me to do. And she did. And I could repeat that story many times over. For those of you that said, no, I'm an infielder. Well, we're going to need you to play outfield today. And you faithfully stepped up and did that. So this is a celebration of all the 600 or 700 people that'll be here today between all the services.
Thank you and next week we have Sunday school at the same time. There's coffee and donuts, so we'll see you then. But anyway, bless y'all. We're going to just take a breath for a minute and right into second service. Thank you.
Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesus.